How are y'all? Happy Tuesday. How's everyone's week? Oh, and I'm getting this is the best thing about the new updates here on Facebook. I'm getting some what do you call those things? Subtitles as well. That is very exciting. Welcome. How's everyone's week going? I'm so looking forward to our conversation today. We're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is mindset and the brain and how that relates to business. I feel like this is a conversation I'm having with clients all day, every day in different ways. And so I wanted to bring it to all of you. I feel like we've talked about this probably in the group as well, but I wanted to break down some nuances because I think something I share about in content quite a bit is this idea that the brain lies all the time. And I think that's one of those things, okay, like we can kind of get that, but what does that actually mean? So I want to break down what that means and help you understand why the brain lies, because I think that can be a little confusing and it's very easy when we start to understand this concept to make ourselves wrong. And that is something I am so proponent of not doing. So I want to chat a little bit about that, why the brain does this, how you can tell if your brain is lying or if it's telling the truth, because your brain is sneaky. And then I'm going to share a tool that I have come up with that's really supporting me, that I've been using with clients as well, and it's been supporting them to help when your brain is lying, to help separate out some of those thoughts to create a little bit of that separation. If you're live now, let's see. Oh, yep, this is working. Stephanie says, I finally made it live. Marissa says, hi, Kim. Hey, Stephanie, I think I have these on a little bit of a lag, but so nice to see you all. I'm so happy to have you both here. Marissa says, the brain is such a liar. The brain is the fucking liar. Also, y'all, I'm laughing. This is the dress. This is like so not related, but this is the dress I was wearing all day for client calls on Zoom, except for on my first call of the day, I had it without this little piece here. Luckily, I had the camera kind of set like higher like that. And I realized when I got off of the call, thankfully, that it was up higher because it was showing a little too much skin. So for any of my ladies, y'all will have to let me know where your favorite like camisoles are, because I had to throw something on for all of you, because that's not the kind of show we're running here. And I was just catching that as I was looking at the comments. So little funny side story of what was happening behind the scenes in my day. So yes, the brain is a really big liar. And I think I'd be interested to hear from those of you who are live and when you're watching the replay too. Why do you think the brain lies? I think that's always a fascinating thing to play around with, was why does our brain lie? I think we can get on track with the brain lies, but why does it lie? And I'm gonna, before I chime in with my thoughts, I'm gonna see if y'all have anything with why you think the brain lies. Jen says to keep you safe. I think that is a very spot on answer right there. It's exactly that. I think something we chat about a lot and something I'm always talking with clients about is your brain. I know I've said this before, but I'm gonna say it again. Your brain's not designed for success. It's not designed to run a business that you're in love with and to make lots of money and to have a wonderful, amazing life. In fact, so often with my clients, as they're growing and scaling in business, a lot of the work we're doing mindset-wise, believe it or not, is actually stretching through the discomfort that comes up when things are going really well. I think people don't talk about this enough, right? When things are going well, when you have everything you want, when you're making great money. And I know if you're in the place where you're building that, this can feel like, okay, shut the front door. That's really annoying to hear. But I think it's just fascinating to hear as well, because I think the brain can tell you the lie that things will be better than when you're there, and that you'll only feel, bliss and rainbows. And I think what's really fascinating, because I do see the behind the scenes of so many businesses, to know is when things are really good. I did a live stream on this on upper limiting, which I'll have to find and link back to. But when things are really good, that can also be very uncomfortable. And that can also kick up a bunch of lies from the brain, because the brain is designed to keep you alive. The brain is designed for survival. The brain is our operating system. And I think something that's helpful to think about too is the brain is a little different from the mind. Your mind is what operates your brain, but your brain is something you as a human and me as a human, it has evolved over time, really with the whole intention of keep you alive. And so it's really basic in many ways. It's like the most high-tech computer you could ever have, and also very basic and simple in other ways, and that it's trying to keep you alive, and it wants to keep you safe, which means it wants to avoid pain, it wants to seek pleasure. It wants to conserve calories. And I know I've shared this before, but I think it's just helpful to understand when I say conserve calories. What I mean by that is our brain is really designed to create patterns and loops as a way to save time and to conserve calories, because back in the day, if a tiger or bear was to run after you, you needed to conserve all those calories to put into your muscles to be able to run the fuck away, right? To stay alive. So even conserving calories, even creating patterns, the reason we all have patterns, the reason we all have thought patterns is if your brain can have shortcuts, that is really efficient to conserve calories so that you can stay safe. And so I think it's so helpful to see, so you don't make yourself wrong when you start to notice all the ways your brain lies to you. A lot of the times it's lying to you because it has created shortcuts at some time in your life that really served you in that particular moment. Maybe when you were 8 years old, something happened and your brain created a thought construct that really served you in that moment for your safety, for your survival, so that you could really function in the world. And then because your brain, again, is designed to conserve calories and stay alive, it's like, hey, this worked really well for us. At 8 years old, this is how we make sense of the world. This is amazing. This works. Let's keep doing this because this kept us safe. You're still alive. This thing here, let's just create a pattern out of this. And so what happens for all of us, this is not a one person in particular. This is everyone who is a human, who's maybe not a sociopath, but everyone is a human having a human experience. We have these different things happen in our life. Positive, negative, neutral. Some of them might be challenges. Some of them might be super, super benign, but the brain is always looking at what's happening, making meaning essentially for like, how do we make meaning in a shortcut to keep you safe and alive? And then as adults, our brain is just pulling up that past information over and over and over again and laying it onto whatever present circumstances are. And this is why the brain lies so often, because it's not trying to be a jerk. It's not trying to be, mean. It's not trying to keep you from success because it doesn't want you to have, all of these amazing, wonderful things. It is literally trying to keep you safe, and it is pulling up past information because it's like if we go into Google and you don't give Google the best instructions, you don't give it the best keywords ever, it just kind of like whatever it pulls up for your search function, if that's the only thing you searched and you didn't keep typing in something else, it just kind of gives you a crappy, you call that like a search from Google. And you all know, many of you know, I'm getting married soon. So we've been like doing a lot of wedding research, right? So if I'm looking for a florist, for example, for my wedding, if I don't type in really great keywords into Google and really put in really great information, Google's just going to spit back kind of shitty information for me, not because Google's broken, not because it doesn't want me to have a good florist, not because it's not trying to be helpful. It's a computer and it is just trying to give me whatever, based on the information I'm giving it. And so for all of us, as we're going around running our businesses, as we are operating in our businesses, if we're not consciously being mindful of what we're typing into our Google, in our brain, what it's doing by default is it's just kind of picking up the easiest Google search from possibly a decade ago, 20 years ago, that kind of matches whatever situation you're in. And it's pulling up that Google search and placing it on, basically onto your feed, onto your peripheral. And this is how we get stuck in lives of the brain so often, because so often our brain, our computer's output, our Google search is often a 20-year-old search based on something that kept you safe 20 years ago, as opposed to what is currently going on and what currently serves you, not even for safety because you're safe, but that will currently serve you to create that next level of success. Let me pause and see if my little brain geek out here and Google analogy makes sense. Y'all, is this making sense? Let me know if this makes sense, if you have questions, reflections, if you have bra advice for me, or we can throw that in as well. Very, very open to all of the above. I'm just seeing here, comes in a bit of a lag when I'm on Zoom. So I think this is really helpful to understand, because otherwise, as you're looking at mindset, and so often I talk about managing your mind to manage your business, I think sometimes we can think like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, I get that. And yeah, okay, the brain lies. But I think if we don't understand what's happening, it's a little tough not to make yourself wrong, but I think it can also make it challenging to understand how to manage your brain, or even to understand like how you can spot if your brain is lying to you. So that's a little context just in terms of why this happens. Your brain is not mean. Your brain is not wrong. You're not broken. I go off on rants quite a bit because I think so often this is a place where you, I, anyone, as we're learning about this, can go into like, well, I'm just broken or I need fixing. And I always want to be such a proponent of no one is broken, no one needs fixing. We are all incredibly empowered, incredible human beings. The only broken fixing is thinking you need fixing, and that is a lie from the brain. But I think understanding where this comes from can really help to unpack what's going on. Because so often in business, where we get stuck in business, where we limit our capacity for growth, when we get stuck, when we feel like we're hiding in plain sight, when we feel like we're not taking up space, when we feel like we're scared to sell, when we feel like we're not owning our power, pulling back. For those of you who believe in manifesting, when you believe like your energy isn't in the place that's calling in the results you want, so often what's happening is the brain is lying all day long to you and giving you instructions to run your business from a place of safety, from a place of, hey, we're scared about a bunch of stuff. This is how you can stay safe. These are some well-meant lies that I am handing you. And those lies are often truths, ways you learn to stay safe a very, 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 very long time ago. And so it can be very powerful to start to notice when your brain is lying to you so that you can start to choose consciously what is true in the moment and to run your business from present day and even from future tense. I talk a lot about neutrality in business. I think when we're looking at our business neutrally, that's when we're removing the lies from our brain, or not even removing them, but when we're noticing the lies our brain is handing us. And instead of looking at business from, the past experiences that are getting put onto present day experiences, when you're looking at your business neutrally, that's really when you're just looking at what's actually happening now. How can I be aware and conscious of what's happening in the current construct? And then I think what can be a really powerful thing to play with, and this is not the tool I share, but we're just to give some ideas here, is to look at, and what do I want to create? What is that next level for me in business? I talk a lot about your future self. I call it my future business self. And I really like to operate business from either a neutral place, meaning I'm not operating business from fear, or I'm not operating business from a really charged, activated place from those lies. I'm not operating my business from 8-year-old Kim. And also, when I'm in a neutral place, can I look at that next level version of myself, that next level version of a business owner, and start to make decisions in business from that place? Because if we have to think that so often the lies our brain is handing us now to keep us safe, as Jen so beautifully pointed out, are coming from past experiences, right? That this is every human ever, right? Most of us are living and running our business like this, kind of like looking over our shoulder from what happened before us to make sure it doesn't happen again. We can think then the best way to reconstruct that, to rewrite that, is to look forward to something that hasn't happened yet and to make decisions and to create truths from a place that hasn't happened yet. Let me know if this is making sense for y'all. Oh, comments here. Let's see. Stephanie says, I used to be a wedding planner before my big move. LOL. Oh, that's so fun. Well, I would be the most boring wedding planner person ever because I'm having a wedding with 3 guests, and it's my brother, my mom, and my stepson, my bonus son. So we're having a very, 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 very micro wedding due to COVID and other factors. So I don't know how much fun I would be to plan a wedding for, but I'm sure you have so many good insights for me on fun things like flowers and probably things I'm not even thinking about. Stephanie says, I'm getting better at noticing the lies. Sometimes it's still not at the time it tells me the lie though, but it has been a work in progress. Stephanie, I think this is so helpful to reflect because you're kind of tipping me into the next place, which is also how can we tell if our brain is lying to us? How can you tell if your brain is lying to you? And I think it's just really normalizing for everyone as well to see that I think it's a lifelong journey in noticing when your brain is lying to you, because that's sort of the brain's default setting. And not because your brain is mean, but because your brain it's a computer and it really only knows how to operate on past experiences. That's the Google input most of us have. Pull up past experiences, play them over present experiences in business to keep me safe. If I'm going to be outside of my comfort zone, especially pull up past experiences to keep me safe, right? That's just what most of us are inputting into our brain by default. So unless we are consciously putting something different into Google, our brains Google, what does my future self think here? What will my future self do here? What's presently happening, right? That's just the default. So I think for everyone, this is a lifelong practice of awareness. And I think just to like see, like we get faster and easier. The lies get easier and faster to notice, but I don't know that the lies ever stop. And I think there are always times for all of us when we're outside our comfort zone, when things do feel a little scary. And if things don't feel scary, that probably means you are in your comfort zone, right? That is going to happen by default. And I think it's just a pattern or a practice over and over again of just getting quicker and faster at noticing them. So I really appreciate you for saying that, Stephanie, because I think it just helps normalize for everyone. So it's not like there's some like place we get to where this never, ever, ever comes up or happens. So I think one of the ways to know if your brain is lying to you, I don't know if anyone here knows Amanda Francis's work. She's like a money manifestation person, but I've heard her speak to this, and I think it's actually a really helpful construct and frame. And I'm going to explain why, because it's also how we can impart new thoughts. And then I will share the tool I've been sharing with clients that I think I made up. So it'll be fun to unpack with y'all. But Amanda Francis talks about this idea that, and I'm just wanting to make sure I'm giving credit where credit is due, but really she calls them lies from the devil. And she essentially describes it as thoughts that don't feel good are lies. So if you have a thought that doesn't feel good, it's a lie from your brain. And I want to unpack that a little bit because I think that can be very, very confusing. And I think a lot of chatter can come up from the brain around that. First, I want to distinguish there is a difference between thoughts and feelings. And I talk so much about the importance of feeling your feelings and processing your feelings and not bypassing feelings in my content and with clients. So I want to be very clear here to distinguish thoughts and feelings are two different things. Thoughts influence feelings, feelings influence thoughts. They are very interconnected, and both of those influence your action that influence your results. And there's a full circle there, but they are different, and they're different in the body. Feelings are a chemical response in our body to our thoughts usually, and vice versa. They influence each other that way. So we're not bypassing feelings. We're not ignoring feelings. We're not saying if you're feeling something that doesn't feel good, that your body is lying or anything like that. What we're saying here is thoughts that don't feel good are lies. And I think this is really helpful because then this comes to an idea that I think can be helpful to play with when we talk about mindset work, in that really all thoughts are lies, in my opinion, and all thoughts are true depending on what you decide. And you really get to, when you're in the seat of consciousness, when you're being aware, when you are consciously creating your business and your life and working your mindset and choosing your future self and to operate from that place. And I know that sounds like a bunch of woo talk, but this is also very based in brain science. The beautiful thing from this is you get to consciously choose what you want to be true. And really anything you decide is both true and false, depending on someone's perception, right? All of us are experiencing this moment through the lens of our personal truth in slightly different ways. All people who are running a business are not having the same experience at the same time, because we're all constantly projecting our own brain truth onto whatever is happening, circumstances around us, right? It's our perception that really creates our own personal reality. Hopefully this is making sense. So really all truths are lies, all lies are truths. So the way you can know if your brain is lying to you is if your brain is handing you something, a thought that does not feel good. That's a really good indication that that is a thought that is a lie for you, and an opportunity to choose a new thought that actually feels good. Because at the end of the day, all truths are lies, all lies are truths. You get to consciously then choose what thought feels good for you, which will then help influence is the word I'm looking for, the feelings you have in your system, in your body. And again, this is very, 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 very different than processing a trigger, processing an emotion. We're talking about very different things here. We're talking about consciously choosing thoughts, consciously starting to notice when lies are popping up. One other thought I'll put here, and then I want to see if there's questions around this, because I know this can be a little bit bendy, but this is also, this is why we talk about creating from the future a lot with mindset work. Because if anyone who knows Joe Dispenza's work, he talks a lot about creating from the future. And I think this is really the reason, because it's hard to know the truth of your thoughts from the past. And so if you can choose thoughts consciously from the future, again, you're choosing something new, you're choosing a higher level thought. You can consciously choose something that does feel good for you and put that onto the present to create what you want, as opposed to a thought that doesn't feel so good for you that really is going to be a thought from the past that you're just replaying over and over and over again, and kind of having a Groundhog Day experience of like the same thought, the same feeling, the same experience. And that's where a lot of people get stuck. The other way I've heard this described that I think could be helpful just to like tease out, like, is my brain lying to me or not? Because I know one of the concerns I have from clients, and something that can come up quite a bit, is, but how do I know if this is my intuition or my gut or, my higher self telling me to watch out for something? What if a thought doesn't feel good? And like, how do I know what's going on there? And I did a podcast episode with my girlfriend, Kara, who I have to remember to link to these. If someone actually puts that in the show notes, I'll remember to link back to it. She talked about this in a really great way. So I'm going to paraphrase, but I will link to it. But she really talked about the difference between ego and higher self. And when something's coming from our higher self, or your intuition, or your gut, depending on what you speak to, when your brain is telling you the truth versus when it's more of your ego. Ego tends to come more from that place of fear, right? That place of like trying to protect you and keep you safe. That's where a lot of the lies from our brain can come from, or lies from our mind that gets fed to the brain can come from. She really talked about how the ego is a lot louder and the higher self is just a lot more calm and a lot more trusting and a lot more almost like even. So even if it's telling you something, it's not coming from a scared, frantic place, because it knows you're okay. It knows you're safe. It's coming from that higher version of you. And I think it was a really fascinating way for me to think about the difference between, is your brain lying to you or not lying to you, right? Like, is this my intuition? Is this my gut? Is this something like, oh my gosh, I actually need to worry about this negative thought? Or is this something I want to believe is true? And I thought that was very helpful when we're hearing from our higher self, even if it is something, hey, watch out, or, like a warning like that, it's usually going to come in a lot more calm, grounded, neutral way. Whereas when it's your ego, or when it's a lie from the brain, right? When it's coming from that fear as a way to keep you safe, when it's coming from an old pattern that's looping in, there's usually a lot more frenetic energy around it. Or it's something you've heard a lot of times, right? Like it's a repetitive thought and pattern, as opposed to something like, oh, this is new and interesting. Let me pause before we move forward. I don't think there's no comments here, but let me know, y'all, if this is making sense, because I think that can be I think it can sometimes be confusing. So I think it's just helpful to understand that difference. So we don't want to like trip ourselves out and like overthink the process around this, but brain lies all the time. And I think the thing I would offer here is, how do you know if your brain is lying to you? It doesn't feel good. And it's not in alignment with what you actually want. And again, remember, you just get to decide your thoughts. Like, you get to decide what's true for you. And I think that goes back to, all thoughts are lies, all lies are truths, and that it's really up to you and what you decide and what you believe. Like, you get to believe the things you want to believe. And so there's something really beautiful around that, where it's, if I'm believing something that doesn't feel good, I just get to decide that's a lie and tell my brain that's a lie, and choose something that feels better for me. Choose a thought that is more empowering. Choose a thought that actually serves me, my business, more. And what's nice is, it takes a lot of the way the brain wants to loop around a lie, because your brain, my brain, all of our brains love to lie to us. They also love to fight for limitations. I talk about this a lot in sales. When we're supporting someone through a sales objection and there's something that's coming up for them, I always like to remind clients, as humans like to fight for our limitations. We do not like to choose more empowered thoughts, right? Like, we like to fight for our limitations. And why do we like to fight for our limitations? Because we believe them to be true, and we think they keep us safe. We think they keep us, in homeostasis, and they keep our world working. So when we have an objection, even if on the other side you can see for someone that this is something that isn't maybe serving them, and you want to have a conversation with them about that, I think it's really helpful to remember, someone's not trying to lie to you. They're not trying to make up an excuse. They're not trying to have an objection to be difficult. They believe what they're saying, and they want to fight for that limitation, because of all the reasons we're talking about here. And so I think that can be really helpful to see in sales conversations, so that when you're navigating objections, you can have that awareness to support someone through seeing a different perspective, or maybe shifting through their own brain's limitations. But the same is true for you and I, as we're looking at the lies that your brain might be handing you, that might be holding you back in business, that might be having you sabotage or play small or not make the offer you want or limit yourself in business or not, take up space the way you want to. So remembering your brain is the same thing, right? Like the objections your brain hands you, the lies your brain hands you, your brain wants to fight for that. Your brain thinks, I get something from believing this lie, and I am going to fight really fucking hard for this. One of my favorite questions for clients is essentially a question around what's the payoff, or, what do you get from, and not like, what's the payoff? Like, how does that serve you? But very genuinely, like, how does that lie benefit you? How does that lie help keep you safe? How does that lie serve you in your business? And again, this is not a sarcastic question. It's a genuine question, because in that you can also see why you might want to hold on to a lie so tightly. It's like our lies are our little snuggie blankets, and we all have them. I have them as well. Some of them are just like, they're my self-coping mechanism, right? And I have to notice, oh, that's what's happening here. But when you can notice that, it's really helpful, because then you don't have to fight with the limitation the same way. Then you don't have to fight with yourself the same way. Then you're also not trying to get to the bottom of the barrel to try to figure out what's going on with your thought process, instead of, oh, I can see what's going on here. And as soon as you have that awareness, you create that little space in your brain. You create that little gap where you can observe yourself, where you're not getting hooked by your lie, not getting dragged down by it. And you can actually step outside yourself long enough to be able to choose the truth you want to believe. I'm just seeing here. Jen says, makes so much sense. Thank you for affirming that. I always want to make sense with stuff like this, especially when we're talking like brain. Well, let's be real, a little woo-woo talk that this is landing. This, by the way, is some of my favorite stuff to geek out on, so I'm glad it's making sense. Feel free to throw questions at me as well. So that's kind of how we can tell if the brain is lying and how we can play with it. One of the so actually, before I share the tool, so I think what can be helpful, and what I will ask clients quite a bit when you notice that your brain is lying to you, and it will do it all day long, right? This doesn't feel good. And instead of fighting with that thought, I think sometimes to create some of that separation, one of the questions I find really powerful, and that I will play with, and maybe we need to do a podcast episode around this, but is simply, is this a thought I want to listen to? Is this a thought? Is this something I choose to listen to? I will sometimes also ask whose voice is that? And maybe we will do a podcast episode on that one, because I think there's a lot of fun stuff to unpack around that, because a lot of times the lies that your brain is handing you aren't even your own lies. They're lies that someone else's lying brain, with all the best intention in the world to keep you safe, when you're growing up, were given to you by a well-meaning parent, or were given to you by a well-meaning teacher, well-meaning family member, well-meaning friend. Society around us, all of us, no matter how far along we are in our personal development journey, right? We all have limiting thoughts. We all have lies our brain hands us. And most people are projecting their own limiting thoughts on other people all day long. And it's why we have to be mindful of what we allow ourselves to take in and to believe. And so I think we have to be mindful of even the content we're consuming, or the support we're receiving, or, who we're sharing certain ideas with, because most people are, if I describe this, most people are projecting their own beliefs on you, their own view of the world onto you, not hearing your view, and then very neutrally listening and supporting you with that to a next level view. And unless they're doing the work we're all talking about here to really be able to hold space in that way. So for all of us, when we're growing up and in adulthood, and different various stages in our life, well-meaning people have essentially shared their own lies that are projections of, their own world, that probably don't even have a whole lot to do with you, but that, especially, the subconscious mind is, so much of it is formed by the age of 7 to 10. We can rewrite the brain, but for a lot of us, the lies, these stories that are popping up in present day are from, decades ago. And oftentimes they are not even your own lies or your own forms of truth through your own stories, but they come from some well-meaning adult. So I think it can be really helpful to check in with whose voice is that? And is this a voice or is this a thought I even want to listen to? And I think that can be a really helpful way to, again, create some of that separation. And then the tool that I'm really obsessed with, and it's super, super simple, but I find it to be just a really helpful way, again, to create that separation and not to have to wrestle with the thought, because I think one of the most helpful things I can offer you when I think about thought work and mindset work and managing the mind is looking at the less you can wrestle with your thoughts, the less you can wrestle with your fear, the more you can shift your thought, the more you can rewire your brain, the more you try to argue and wrestle with a thought. It's sort of like wrestling a bear. The bear's just bigger than you. The bear's going to win, right? Like it's just been around longer. It just like has such a need. It's like trying to keep you safe. It's just like, it's like being in quicksand is another way to think about it, right? Like the more we try to argue with our own thoughts and our own brain and fight our own story, it's why we like to fight for our own limitation, right? And argue our way out of something. Have you ever noticed how you just convince yourself more and more and kind of get into quicksand? It's what happens with politics. Have you ever tried to have a conversation with someone who has a different political viewpoint than you and try to argue with them and seeing what happens? All you do is they just argue back and reinforce and believe what they believe even more. It's rare that we have an argument with someone and we convince them of what we're thinking, right? All that happens is the other person digs their heels in and they convince themselves more of what they believe. You convince yourself more of what you believe. That's a little bit of what happens when we try to argue with our thoughts and when we think about managing the mind. I think so often that's how we try to manage our mind. We try to manage our mind by arguing with it, but it's just creating to like your limitations are just going to like dig their heels in more. What we're looking for is how can we release, create enough space so that you can create a new thought. So asking yourself, is this a thought I will listen to? Is whose voice is that? And then what I like to play with, and again, this is so stupid simple, but stupid simple works really well. The phrase I like to play with is, this is not that. This is not that. Meaning, what is going on right now in your business? So let's just say let's say you're having a triggered, let's say you're in a sales process with someone and they said something to you, like you're in follow-ups and you're feeling triggered around that. Your brain is handing you lies. They don't feel good. Whose voice is this anyway? Like, is this a thought I want to listen to? And then you have enough separation to say, this is not that. What is happening right now is not that, meaning that is often the voice you don't want to listen to, right? Like wherever that voice is coming from, wherever that lie is coming from, 8-year-old self, most of us have done enough mindset work to know that the thought is stemming from. And it can be really helpful to see this situation with this potential client in front of me. This is a very neutral situation. This is not that. This is not that voice at all. Those are two separate things. My job is to separate that out and choose what I want to, like what's going on here and how I want to respond. I get to choose a new thought instead of listening to that lie. Let's say you're trying to think of another situation that happens in business a lot. I think this can happen with, you have a client who's going through something challenging. This happened. I support clients quite a bit with their clients, whatever's going on with their client stuff. And we'll be talking through that. And sometimes it can trigger up their lies in their brain, their patterns that are super, super repetitive. And we will play with like, whose voice is that? Is that a thought you want to listen to? And then this is not that, meaning this situation here, it feels super triggering. It feels, maybe there's something we want to process there, but this is not that, meaning what's going on here has absolutely nothing to do with that your brain wants it to be about, with the past experience your brain is trying to put onto present day, that it so badly wants to make as the same thing to keep you safe, right? Your brain just wants to do this, like this is the same thing. Or what we want to keep doing is how can we create enough space so you don't get hooked by that thought, hooked by that lie and emotion, so you can say, oh, this is not that. This is a very neutral situation. This probably actually has nothing to do with the lie my brain is handing me. I can then neutrally, more consciously look at what's going on, choose the thought I want to believe here, and handle the situation in front of me. All right, let me see if y'all have questions And if this is resonating, let me know if you have questions around how to use that tool. Again, like I said, it's a very, very simple tool, but I have been finding it really powerful. I shared, for those of you who listen to the podcast, to One Question, Unapologetic Questions for Unapologetic Results, I've been sharing on a couple different episodes that I, like everyone, have experienced trauma with a capital T and a lowercase t. I think all of us as humans have experienced trauma in some way, shape, or form, even if it's not capital T trauma. I think most of us have experienced lowercase t trauma. And I think trauma will be something, and can be something, that creates a lot of lies in the brain, because the brain, again, it wants to keep you safe. And so a trauma response can feel very, very real. And it can feel like in your body and in your brain, like this is a very, very real thing. And so I found this is where I created This Is Not That. It's been something that's been very helpful for me, because so much of what I strive to do with clients, like I want to check my shit at the door, but I also want to be as neutral as possible and really, neutralize, what's the word I'm looking for? Not neutralize, not activate, not recharge, take care of my nervous system. And I also want to make sure I'm really consciously choosing my thoughts. And while I want to process and heal trauma, I really want to be mindful that I'm not having trauma brain, and that I'm not having lies that my brain has created as a way to keep me safe be what dictate my business, or be what dictate my life experience outside of business, or be what dictate, my interactions with people. And so I have found This Is Not That is a really helpful way for me to unhook from sometimes the trauma response. And, again, capital T, lowercase t. And I find it's a very helpful tool to also help allow for the processing when there is a visceral response in your body and some sort of sensation. So you can sit with a sensation that maybe is uncomfortable. So you can sit with, if we have emotion in the body, like if I have a trigger response in my body, I tend to feel it in my chest. And I know some clients feel it in their stomach or their belly. That's not a very comfortable feeling, but it can be really empowering when you can sit with that feeling and see, but this is not that, right? What I'm experiencing now, I'm going to sit with this. I'm going to let myself feel it. I'm going to process it through and out. But what I'm feeling is not that past experience. This is not that. I'm actually really, really safe now. And so it can help create a lot of safety in your body as well as with your brain, because the body can lie to you as well, right? The body can tell us, you're not safe, you're not safe, you're not safe, danger, danger, danger. When if we look around, we're in fact very, very, very safe. And so playing with This Is Not That can really help with those lies. And again, we're not saying don't process, we're not saying bypass, but I find it can really be helpful to allow you to sit in the experience of, and then to shift and create a new experience, and start to see how often both brain and body want to lie and say you're not safe when you really are safe. And the more safety we can all create, and please let me know like if this is resonating, but I find the more safety we can create, really that's where our self-trust comes from, right? When I feel safe, I trust myself. When I feel safe, I know I'm good enough. When I feel safe, then it feels easy to take up space, right? Why do we hide in plain sight? I talk a lot about that. My coaching program is called Stop Hiding in Plain Sight and Get Paid. Why do I talk about hiding in plain sight and taking up space? When we're in fear, when we don't feel safe, when we're having that visceral response, what do all of us want to do when we don't feel safe? Fight, flight, freeze, right? Hide, essentially, in some way, shape, or form. When we create safety, when we trust ourselves, when we feel safe and we have those thoughts that that we're consciously choosing, and we know we feel safe in our body, it allows us to take up space in a different way, right? If I feel safe, I can show up on this live stream and I feel a lot more, it's a lot easier for me, whatever I might be feeling, to show up and share content, to share my truth, to share my ideas, to maybe, sometimes I share live streams where I'm like, oh, I'm sharing some stuff that, this feels vulnerable, or this feels challenging to share. But when you feel safe, it's easier to do that. Same with if you're having a sales conversation, or we were talking about objections earlier, right? Like if you're having those feelings or those thoughts that don't feel safe, those lies from the brain, and you don't know how to create that separation, you're just going to want to shut down. You're not going to want to lean in. So I think there's just something really interesting overall. It's like so fascinating to me how much of business, like, yes, there's the strategy side, and I love me some strategy, and we can geek out on that strategy all day long, and that there's a place for that in business. And absolutely. And what makes that strategy, what helps us to execute on strategy, take action on strategy, and to get results from strategy, comes back to the mindset piece. And I think so much of the mindset piece, what we're looking at is, how do I keep creating safety so I can feel safe enough to run and take action, when I don't know, when my brain is handing me lies. I'm seeing if I have any questions or thoughts, and I'm just checking my notes to see if I had anything else I wanted to share with you here. I think the last thing I will close with, unless you do have, let me just see, because I do know there is a little bit of a lag, but I don't think any of y'all do. But before we hop off, please do let me know if you have questions about this or how to apply this, or just even thoughts or reflections around that. What I would offer, and in terms of thinking about this is not that, I also think this can be a really powerful tool for, again, pattern interrupting. And that's something I talk about quite a bit with clients as well. And again, when we're pattern interrupting, we are trying to create just enough space. I always think like thought and that emotion in our body and that response, right? So often they're fused together. And we just get so hooked by our thoughts and so hooked by our feelings that we are no longer consciously operating. We do have just those past lies, right? Those past experiences, they're kind of running the show, instead of what I think so much of the work we're doing is how can we create just enough separation so that you can get into your conscious mind to choose the thought you want to have, to choose the truth you want to believe, to choose the action you want to take, to see this is not that. So I find this is not that, again, can be a really helpful pattern interrupt. Anytime we can interrupt the pattern, remember we were talking about the patterns earlier, the pattern is your brain is lazy in the nicest way possible, and it's just trying to conserve calories, and it's just going to repeat those loops. How can we interrupt that loop long enough so that it's not just wanting to go down into the quicksand? And instead, this is not that. If you can do that, that's when you can really play with too. Can I now look at, and this is, I think, just the place to play with, from the conscious mind, like if your brain lies to you all the time, you get to choose the new lies, the new truths. And something I want to invite everyone here, this is something I do in my business. This is one of my favorite mindset exercises, but it is playing with. So from this place, from the more neutral place, when we have, created that separation, can you look at what is that next level version of yourself, that next level you, and really start to play with whether it's he or she or they, what are you thinking there? What do you tell yourself there? What is the reality for you? What do you believe? What do you know to be true from that future place? What feels good to be true? What kind of decisions do you make there? How do you show up? How do you take action? How do you interact? What do you think about what's going on? But really see if you can flesh some of that out, because then that gives you a really nice place to create those new truths for yourself. And it's really, really fascinating. So I had this with a client today. We were referencing another podcast episode that I did with my friend Elise, where we were talking about essentially like the meaning we make of things and what do you want to make something mean. I think what's really beautiful here is you get to really create for yourself what you want to make your business mean, what you want to make your world mean. And we know that the way we think, the way we feel really dictates the way you show up and take action and the results you create. So if you can do that from not just what are you making a current situation mean, but if you can project yourself to the next level version of yourself and see what does that version of you make your business mean? What is that version of you? How are they making meaning of the world? How are they interacting with the world? What are they thinking? How are they behaving? How are they being? That's a really, really, really powerful place to create truths from, or lies from, however we decide to look at it. And that's a really powerful place to show up from. But to be able to show up from that place, right, we have to know how to catch when the brain is lying and to catch when we're not showing up from that place, and to kind of almost to, again, create enough separation so you can step into that version of yourself. I'm going to share one last thing just to give you all time in case you do have any questions, thoughts, reflections, anything for me, and then I will hop off for you all. But this is something I've probably shared here before, but just it pops up. It's kind of unrelated, not what I was planning on sharing, but just bonus fun thing to talk about. One of my favorite mindset practices that I really enjoy kind of thinking through this lens is I have for my next level version of myself as a business owner, I give her a name. She, I like flesh out who she is, how she thinks, how she interacts, like how is she showing up? I will ask her to give me advice and I'll journal with her. And so I think this is a really fun way to play with in terms of like the brain's always lying to you, but how can you play with some of those, creating those next level thoughts? So I will just journal with with that version of myself. I'll also practice gratitude, exercise called future gratitude. I will write gratitude from her already in that next level result. And I will have her, I think I've shared this when I talked about team stuff quite a bit, when I'm looking at hiring team support, or when I've looked at, investing in a course or in a coach or in a program, I will journal dialogue with that next level version of myself to see what she says. For someone else, it might be he, it might be they, but I'll really dialogue with that, because that really helps me to step out of, again, what we were talking about here, those past patterns, that past thinking, those thoughts that are really lies, and those lies that can be really limitations that all of us have, that our brain just wants to fight for, because and remember, lies seem true in the moment. Your brain is going to fight for them and argue for them. So I find that to be a really helpful way to step outside of that, to make those higher level decisions in business. So you're not, again, by default, accidentally. So I think sometimes it's hard to have the awareness around those lies in your business. Okay, that is my last thought for you on that one. Let me know if anyone on the replay watching now, if you have a question before I hop off. If not, I'm going to let you all go and go make some dinner here. If any of you do want support around managing your mind, having a mirror, a reflection, someone outside of you who is really good at holding space and seeing your higher level and your next level self, so that you can separate out the BS the brain wants to hand you and step into that next level version of yourself in your business, along with the strategy side of things, right? Like navigating, messaging, and marketing and sales. That's what I support clients with all day, every day. I'm really, really good at it. I love my clients. I love my work. We get excellent results, and I would love to support you. I am fully booked, but we do have an opening this month for an intensive. So if anyone is looking for an intensive, whether you want to talk more strategy around sales, messaging, marketing, mapping out a marketing strategy or plan, or you want to dive into some of the mindset work, we can look at that. And then I believe we should have some openings in September, so we can definitely look at waitlist spots for that. So I would love to chat with anyone who's interested in that. Then we have some spots, I think we sell some spots in October. So anyone who's looking for support, I would love to connect with you. I will drop a link for that, and then I'll drop links back to some of that past content that I referenced. And then I think next week I will be announcing we have, well, I'm letting the cat out of the bag. We're going to have a free Q&A. We haven't done one of those in a while. So we're going to have a free Q&A this month. It'll be kind of like a group coaching situation, not in the Facebook group, but on Zoom. So we will start sharing that next week. I'll make sure to drop links for all of that, so that we can have some of you, so I can interact with you in a more, off of a Zoom call, where I can see some of you and get to answer some of your specific questions and support you around your business. Jen says Kim's intensives are amazing. Jen, I love you. Thank you so much for saying that. I appreciate you. I appreciate all of you for being here. Thank you for hanging with me. I hope this was helpful. This is the kind of topic that my brain geeks out on, but I also, for everyone watching now on the replay too, if there's anything specific you want support around that you want me to touch on in content, whether it's here on a live stream or in an upcoming free training or on the podcast, let me know. I generally bring stuff that I find is coming up for clients behind the scenes that I think is, valuable, beneficial, but I know y'all have questions as well. And I'm really here. Like, I want this to be a resource support for all of you. So feel free, if there's something that you want, specific support around, to let me know, and I'll make sure we add it to kind of the list of topics we're going through. So happy to do that. And Stephanie says, yay, I love those. Yeah, I hope you can come, Stephanie. There will be a replay for it, but I love when it will be in the morning, but we're not doing it quite as, oh no, I think we're doing it a little later than last time. So it won't be quite as early as the last one we did. I know the last one we did was very, very early, but I love getting to do those. So I hope some of you will be able to join live, so that I can support all of you in that setting. All right, lots of love, you all. I have to always find the Zoom, because now I'm in the Facebook group, the Zoom link to end this. I will see you all next week with another topic. Bye.